Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again today as we take a few minutes out of our day in God's Word. We're glad you're watching this or listening to this, as the matter is, whether you're watching this on my Facebook page, our church's Facebook page, or YouTube channel, or listening to this on Apple iTunes or Amazon or Spotify or wherever you are listening and catching this. We're glad you're with us and appreciate the time you've given to us to be part of your day. If you're following along with us, we have been going through the book of 1 Samuel, and we are moving into 1 Samuel chapter 8. We've said this before. Old Testament passages cover larger sections, and so we found that the last few sessions have been basically a chapter at a time, and today is no different than that. We are looking now at the time where Israel demands a king. Please understand something in context, as we'll see in a second. They were undergoing what we call a theocracy, where God was the king. God was the ruler, and his priest was the physical form of that. So when they asked for a king, they were moving to something very different. And that's what makes sense a little bit when we hear God's response. So let's go ahead and jump into this in verse 8, or chapter 8, verse 1, and we'll unpack this. It says, "Now it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel." One thing to clarify there, notice it does not say that he made them priests over Israel. It said that he made them judges. Very different than what Eli did. Similar ending we'll see in a second, but they weren't priests. Simple point, they were just judges. Verse 2, "The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba, but his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, 'Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all nations.'" So the situation they find themselves in was accurate. We know that Samuel has gotten old. He got much older. He's coming to the end, really, of his time of judging. He's unable to. So in wisdom, of course, you place other people in there. You're supposed to set aside, delegate, train other people. Well, his sons, much like Hophni and Phinehas, did not follow God. The difference is they were priests. These men were judges. The fact is they were perverting the justice, and these men were done with it. They said, "We don't want another prophet. We want a king." And they wanted a king that said, like all the other nations. They just want to be like all the other nations. They found it to be prestigious or whatever it was. And of course, we'll see here how Samuel responds in verse 6. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." So Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Heed the voice of the people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing to you also. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly warn them and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them." So the first thing you have to see here is really Samuel's going to God. Can we say he's kind of feeling sorry for himself? And you get this. He has been ruling. He has been kind of leading and reigning. He's not reigning in the dictatorial. He wasn't a king, but he has been their leader. He has been their judge. And now all of a sudden, they want a king. So they didn't want him, and so it was really an affront to him immediately. So he comes to God, kind of angry, frustrated, maybe hurt, and God says, "They weren't rejecting you. They're rejecting me. This is my plan. This is how I designed it. They don't want a religious leader ruling over them. They want a secular leader ruling over them. And here's the thing. It's intriguing. As a preacher, I see that sometimes you go to God and you're so convinced of something, right? And God goes, "Nope, nope, nope. That's not the direction." I hope we always go to God with the impression that what we think he's going to say, we acknowledge he might not. It is perfectly good and perfectly wonderful when we go to him and God says, "I know what you're thinking. I'm going to say no." We should do that because it shows us that sometimes we are driven by emotion, sometimes we're driven by offense, but it's also good for us to recognize that our ways are not God's ways, and we need to learn from him. Always go to God with acknowledging that what you think may not be his plan. That's part of what we do. We got to go with a submissive heart. Let's continue on. God has told him to warn them of what's going to happen. So in verse 10, "So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And he said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen. And some will run before his chariots, and he will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s. Will set some to plow to his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. And he will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage, and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will then take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out in the day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. So you look at this, he gives a whole list of information here of what the king will do. And kings were basically, through a theocracy, the people were ruling themselves. They didn't have all the expense of a palace, all the expense of a king. And when they went to war, they went to war. At one point later, they'll say, we want this guy to go to war for us. The king wasn't going to go to war for them. The king was going to take their kids and send them to war. Here's a principle. There's 3 principles I want to give out. Principle number 1 is be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. You know, in God's sovereignty, he gives us a free will. And in that free will, we look at other people, we look at circumstances, and we say, I really want this, I really want this. And if you push hard enough, God in his sovereignty gave us a free will. And in that, he will sometimes allow us to have what we want. And so be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Now, in this scenario, they're ignoring, we'll see in a moment, they completely ignore the fact of all of the really bad things that are about to happen. The oppressiveness that's about to come on them as a result of a king. And ultimate power corrupts. Ultimate power corrupts. And you're going to get to a point where you're going to have bad kings. And this is what they're giving to the next several generations. But be careful what you wish for. Sometimes you look at things, you've heard the phrase, I've heard it for years, the grass is greener on the other side, or it looks greener on the other side. Well, I heard a guy years ago tell me that one of the reasons the grass looks greener on the other side, number 1, it's either turf, which is fake, or 2, it just has more manure. It looks good, and we always do. We jump over, and there might be nice things on that part, but then there's negative. If we're not willing to be content where God has us and just to flourish where God has us, we'll never be content on the other side, because what we'll do is we'll find the negative on the other side. If you're looking for negative, you will always find it. We need to want what God wants in our life, not what we want. If you keep pushing for what you want out of God's timing, God will let you have it because you're pushing, but it will not be God's best. It will not be in God's will, and you will regret it. That is a promise. So I challenge you, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. The second thing is God's sovereignty is seen in God's mercy. So God doesn't get angry. He doesn't revolt. They're rejecting him, not Samuel. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't say, how dare you? He doesn't strike fire down on them. Here's what he does. He allows them to have it, but then he warns them. He warns them that this isn't going to be as great as you think it is. And before God gives them their own wish, he gives them a warning. You see his mercy in the midst of this. Verse 19, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, no, but we will have a king over us. That he will also be like, catch this, that we also may be like all nations, okay? That's really the problem. Because that our king may judge us, which he will do, and go out before us and fight our battles. He will not go out before and fight our battles. He will take you and your children to go fight your battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, heed their voice, and make them a king. Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his city. The third principle is this. We're not careful. We will become like our desires. They desired to look like other nations. They desired, due to influence and all the other things, we want to be like this. And ultimately, they regretted it through great amounts of discomfort and pain over the years. God had given them as much freedom as you could possibly have, and they rejected it, and they moved on to what often would bring oppressiveness, what many times would take them away from God. The voice of the prophet would lose its power because the king would overrule them, and many, many times in the future history of the children of Israel, of the nation of Israel, the king was going to be their downfall. But they wanted that. They wanted to be like other nations. Their desire drove them to be like other nations. You know what that means? They became like other nations in a lot of other areas. When you desire something so much, be careful. You'll become like what you desire. When you point your attention to something, when you look to something, when you want to be something, if you dwell in it long enough, you will become that. You will think like that. You will act like that. You will run your life like that. Because you will. Your desires establish what you do. I want to be like this, and so you head that direction. If you desire to walk with God, be a servant of God, and then how you do things will be affected by that. If you desire to live the life the world claims is better, you're going to find yourself empty. And that's the challenge we give to you today, okay? Number one, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. God's sovereignty is seen in God's mercy. We will become like the things we desire. May we grab a hold of these three principles. Now, we know later that a great man of God that we still look back that was in the lineage of Jesus is David, a king. So there can be a good thing from this. And God said, this is not my design, but I will still find a way to bless Israel through that. And again, we see great mercy, even though God is the one in this passage really being rejected. Well, we appreciate the time you've given us today to look at this. I hope these thoughts are encouraging and challenging and helpful. We appreciate your time you've given us. Hope you stick with us, as next time we'll jump into chapter 9.